Good morning, everyone. The service this morning, the hymns will proceed unannounced, so we'll not have announcements of hymns. And the offering is a free will offering plate, which will be back at the back of the church, if you'd like to give. After our worship service, I would invite everybody to exit through this door rather than the other one, so we can go through, exit through that door there. Thank you to Linda for creating a tomb, and to Bernie for creating these crosses as well. And thank you to all those who are participating this morning in the Good Friday worship service. There was a person long, long ago who did many things that was wonderful and said pretty astonishing things, and in such a way that people followed him. And when they followed him, they asked questions, he answered. But by the same token, as we see in our world today, that where there are people who say hooray to someone and accept someone, there are others who feel differently. And Jesus was no different. Along with those who saw life and God presented in a new way, there were others who felt threatened. Others who wanted to kill him, to get rid of him. And so on Good Friday, we remember the light that came and was present and is present, and the forces that tried to snuff that light out. And so we gather again on this Good Friday, gather at the foot of a cross, in front of a tomb, amidst the light that seems to be getting slowly blocked out. The gentle sight of a Savior on a donkey has given its way to fear and force. The cries of adoration have given way to jeers. The smell of fresh cut palm branches has given way to the smell of death.
shall see me lifted up upon a tree. Behold, behold, the wood of the cross, on which is hung our salvation. Oh, come, let us adore. For there can be no greater love shown upon this land than in the one who came to die, that we might live. Behold, behold, the wood of the cross, on which is hung our salvation. Oh, come, let us adore.
Will you join with me in prayer? Holy God, on this dark day, we walk with you into the darkest places of our world and our lives. In the dark shadow of Christ's cross, you lead us to discover that even in the darkest places, your loving presence embraces us. Even in the most painful places, your transforming presence heals us. On this day, we see the betrayal of friendships and its consequences. We see how unreliable your followers prove to be in real crisis. We remember that your enemies appear to have the upper hand, and it appears that all hope of your peaceful, inclusive kingdom on earth is lost. As we gather at the front of the cross, we realize that these events are not some distant history. These experiences of hatred, cruelty, and injustice continue in our world today. As we reflect upon the realities of Good Friday and their impact on the lives of your beloved children around the world, forgive our duplicity and grant us wisdom to be faithful followers of Jesus, who is the Christ. We ask in the name of the crucified one. Amen.
Shadows gather deep and cold, lamplight flickers, fades and fails. Lord, you know what daybreak holds, thorn and beatings, cross and nails. You will be denied, betrayed, when the rooster
Please be seated. And at this time we hear from a servant girl.
It was a cold night. I was in the courtyard, warming my hands by the fire. I was aware of a lot of commotion inside the grounds of the high priest's residence. In the darkness, I saw a man, his hands bound with ropes. He was surrounded by a mob of chief priests and scribes. I was sure I'd seen the prisoner before. He looked like the rabbi who was always talking about God and arguing with the religious elite. I wondered why they were holding him prisoner. I turned back to the fire. I noticed another man I was sure I'd seen before. So I asked him, "Are you not one of the men who travel with that prisoner Jesus?" The man said, "I don't know him." I said, "I was sure I saw you with him." Again he said, "I do not know the man." "Are you sure?" I asked. He got really angry then and yelled, "I told you, I don't know him." And then I heard a cock crow somewhere. It was like a trigger. The man broke down and wept.
Jesus, have we offended you by denying you time and time again? Have we stood on the sidelines or simply slipped away when you needed a voice to speak for the oppressed? Have we offered your God and our God? You lived your life with great love. You lived with a willingness to risk and challenge the most powerful people who tried to maintain their positions with no regard for justice or compassion, and certainly not love. Your passion was justice and freedom for all. Your ways, well, they were ways of peace. Betrayals lie like stones of death within us, weighing down our lives with guilt and pain. Reading from the Centurion.
I stood in the high priest's courtyard all night. I heard the religious leaders trying to find some fault with their prisoner, Jesus. They could not agree on the charges, yet all of them condemned the man as deserving death. They spat on him and had him flogged. When morning came, they marched him over to Pilate. I can still see Pilate sitting on the judge's bench, asking this Jesus, "Are you the King of the Jews?" This Jesus answered him, "You say that I am." Then Pilate asked the religious leaders and the mob of people, "Do you want me to release for you the King of the Jews?" The people screamed, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Those cries still rang in my ears. Then, as if to mock him, the religious leaders draped Jesus with a royal robe of purple. They shoved a crown of thorns on his head and bowed down to him. Then they spat on him and had him flogged again. That image still haunts me. It haunts me because of the callousness and injustice. The way of the nations, too often unjust, yet it is the norm for most of us. The crime is that we do not even notice. We have lost hope for a just and inclusive world.
Jesus, do you see this callousness and injustice in us? How often have we participated in allowing the innocent to suffer without raising a hand? How often have we judged and dismissed people as unworthy, as not deserving of our care, our compassion, our presence? How often have we taken part in judging others without question, without thought, without even a tear? I wonder, have we too cried, "Crucify, crucify"? Callousness entombs our compassion, turning our hearts of flesh and life into hearts of stone. Simon of Cyrene.
I was standing on the road to Calvary, the road to Golgotha, a place of death. The road was lined with people, staring, talking, and pointing, as if they had come to watch a parade. Some were mocking this Jesus of Nazareth as he dragged that heavy cross along the uneven road. The man looked exhausted from lack of sleep, lack of food, and the beatings I knew he would have suffered. Then he stumbled under the weight of the cross and slumped to the ground. The soldiers grabbed him and dragged him to his feet. Those soldiers' hands were not really hands to help Jesus. They were hands to drag him closer to his doom. Before I knew it, I was dragged from the crowd. My task was clear. I was to help this man carry his cross. I walked behind the condemned man, trying to bear some of the weight of the cross. Head bent, I could see into his face of the crowd. I wondered, do they really take delight in human misery? Do they try to hide their pain by laughing and jeering at someone else in pain? It is horrible when people close their hearts lest they somehow end up feeling the pain and the burden of the afflicted carrier. I wondered if Jesus saw the same thing, if it broke his heart. He said nothing. He just kept struggling along, dragging this burden, but the silence was thick with sorrow.
Jesus, the world is filled with people who have fallen and who struggle to rise again. And there are no hands to help them. Everywhere you look, there are people who are afflicted, people whom we look at, but we don't see. Invisible. But they're there. People who struggle alone. I wonder, are we too overwhelmed by our own pain to see them? Are we helpless to intervene against the powers of wealth and government and oppression? Jesus, do we think this does not involve us and we wash our hands from these situations? Humankind still gives power to those who use it to oppress and to destroy. We still fail to challenge those who allow the good to die. And when we isolate ourselves from darkness, we isolate ourselves from life and goodness. And the stones and our hearts and our lives become like stone, cold. When it was noon, darkness came over the land. darkness, so cold, so deep, so intense. It felt as if God had turned God's back on humankind. Mary, the mother of Jesus, speaks.
I covered my ears and screamed when I heard the sound of the nails being hammered into his flesh. My child, my beloved child, I cried. My body was filled with so much pain, and I fell to my knees. My Jesus, I wept. He was so full of peace and love. Why this violence against him? Why, God, why? I looked up, but I could not see for the tears that filled my eyes and poured down my face. Somehow I crawled to the foot of the cross and clung to the bottom of it. I heard him cry out, my God, Why have you forsaken me? His words sent my heart asunder. Had God turned back on the world? My body was numb with pain. Then I heard my son whisper, God, into your hands I commit my spirit. He said it with such love and such peace, as one would speak to his beloved. Slowly, I felt a gentle peace begin to embrace me. As the drops of his blood fell on my back, I felt his blood mingling with my blood, as at his birth.
Last night I lay a-sleeping, there came a dream so fair. I stood in old Jerusalem, beside the temple there. I heard the children singing, and ever as they sang, methought the voice of angels from heaven and answer. Was the
and the work of evil slowly enveloped the day. Slowly, that light that seemed so bright and brilliant seemed to be stone cold, unseen, unheard, hanging on a cross, lifeless. And when evening had come, and since it was the day of preparation, the day before the Sabbath, Joseph of Arimathea, a respected member of the council, went boldly to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. And Pilate agreed. Taking down the body, Joseph wrapped it in linen clothes and laid it in a tomb that had been hewn out of rock. He rolled a stone against the door of the tomb. It is finished. When we leave, I'd invite you to leave through this front door here, and I would ask that you'd remain silent. It is time for us to leave this place. Let us commend ourselves into the hands of a loving God, a loving presence. Go in peace and embrace the stoniness of the world with the love we know that embraces each of us in the love of Christ. Walk deeply into your lives with all its frailties and discover there that in spirit and in truth we are walking toward the life, the joy, and the love of God in the days to come. Go now in the presence of that God.